we sort of want to pivot more towards you guys, all the listeners now. Once again, this is a bit presumptuous. Maybe you guys have got your shit together already, but whatever. We'll assume that you would like some advice on this topic. And what I thought was really interesting, and it's stuff I've come across in my readings and I guess, once again, meditations on this subject, which is how do you even reflect on yourself? And I guess more what we'll focus on today. How do you find what goals to focus on? Like, why was it that young Anto was like, hell yeah, I'm going to get good at science. I'm going to also join cadets and a bunch of these extra cricks and make a random philosophies club. And, similar for Wayne, all those things, as well as Amnesty, musical, all those other interests as well, right? Like, how did we even decide that? How do you find, I guess, what you're passionate about? And it is a tricky question. If you're one of our students listening, you'll know we ask you guys this all the time, and you give us very unsatisfactory answers.
Some of them, not all of them.
Yeah, you know who you are, but we don't blame you. We're gonna try and puzzle it out over the time that you're studying with us, and we're really excited to see what answers you'll give us in the future. But we know it's tricky. So, what I found that was really interesting were a couple of, I guess, prompts or questions you can ask yourself to start getting a better idea of what your interest may be. Now, I think there are two potential outcomes here. One, you think about these questions and you do get some ideas, and that's freaking awesome. And now you can start thinking about those and trying to pursue those. The other outcome is you draw a blank on every question. If that's the case, I don't know, don't get depressed. Just know that, keep your horizons open and keep trying things, and it might just appear. You might not have just lived long enough yet, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think you'll see this once we get to the questions, but if you really don't have any answer to the question, then the biggest thing is it just means you haven't seen the world. Right? It just means you haven't tried things. Right? It just means you haven't done anything except what's been the status quo in your life all the way to now, right? And that's not something to feel bad about. That's where we're all a product of our influences and the environment around us, and that's okay, right? But if you realize that that's you, then really it should be your responsibility, and the onus should be on you more and more, especially as you get older, to start taking that into your own hands and trying to find, hey, okay, how do I go out and try find my answers to these questions? And the way you're going to do that is by trying things, which is why we always encourage you to try as many things as you can, right? Just go to a club once, right? Go to a club at your school once. Join a club outside school one time. Go a few weeks. See what it's like. See if you like it. If you do, great, keep going. Try get really good at it. If you don't, that's okay. Try to do the next thing, right? It is never too late to try new things. The other thing is, if you find that you're someone who doesn't have any time to do that because you're always studying, which we know a few of our students are sort of like, even though no matter how much we're trying to get that away from you, right? Then this trying to get yourself started on this journey of self-development and on this journey of just trying things and growing, right, should probably be your biggest motivator to get on top of sorting out everything else in your life, or mainly the study part, so that you have enough time to go out and go do these things, right? You look like you want to add something?
I was going to say, this might be a bit of cognitive dissonance, but for the example I bring up, but basically the idea is, Wayne's really right in the sense that, like, even if you're in that situation where you feel like you have no opportunity to do these other things right now, the first step to breaking free is awareness. Can you at least realize that you're not happy about your current situation, that you do want to get involved in other things? Because if you are in this situation and you just don't care, then you're at ground zero, right? So even if you think it's worth nothing, even if, say, there are other obstacles in your way, and even if you wanted to start straight away, you have no chance to, at least just tell yourself, I want this to be different, right? Anyway, the example I was bringing up, once again, very cognitively dissonant, but I was listening to a really interesting interview with a guy who used to be a long-time criminal and spent a lot of time in the jail system and sort of reformed himself, and he's out now. And he mentioned there's that difference in terms of, like, who can be reformed and who can't. And he's saying the vast majority of people who can't get reformed, they don't have that awareness step. Like, they don't want to get reformed because they don't even think about reform. They're just like, this is my life, whatever they think. I'm not going to pretend I know what criminals think. But, like, this is their life. They go to jail. They do their thing. And this guy mentioned, like, he's been in, like, 3 or 4 times. He's been in for, like, many, many years. And he only started to change when it began with that awareness, where he was first like, oh, these guys are freaking losers. Like, the guys in his jail cell, he's like, I don't want to be in here for the rest of my life. Jail sucks. Which is, like, it might sound so stupid, but, like, he was saying, for the first time in his life, he was saying, oh, this is a place I don't want to be in. Jail literally sucks, right? And then all that other reflection and the bigger development came along later. But he was saying, like, that was sort of where things started changing. And once again, that's a very extreme example, but I think there are ideas that we can draw from that. And I think just being aware of the situation, if it can get people to get out of jail, or at least stop committing crimes, I think can at least help you do more extracurriculars. Surely, this is the easier version of it, right? So it can't be that bad. I guess we'll jump into the questions then. Yeah. So some questions. We'll see how far we get through. But these are very open-ended questions. I really like them. First one. What skill comes to you naturally? What skill comes to you naturally? That's right. You listening right now.
My answer that I thought of straight away when it comes to what skill that you're naturally good at, and like you can pick any skill, right? This can be something super specific, something super vague, right? Whatever. I picked quite a vague one. For me, it was attention to detail. And then that was one of them, and then the other one I picked was just creating things. So ever since I was a kid, even when I was a kid, I liked making things, and it could have been like physical things, like a paper thing, where like I wasn't very good at drawing, but I was good at like physically making things, maybe learning about how things worked, so that I could then make them, right? Like pretending to make my own restaurant thing inside the house, and like drawing on napkins to make my own logos and stuff, building cities, building stuff in games, right? Games where you build stuff and make stuff. Yeah, the simulated things where you can make something, right? I was always drawn to that, and so I felt like I was good at that. I don't know if it was I was drawn to it because I was good at it, or I was good at it because I was drawn to it.
Chicken and egg.
Chicken and egg, it's probably both, right? And then the attention to detail. So I'd always noticed that I was able to not let small things slip, and I think that that's something that's pushed me to the sort of things that I do today. Like even the role that I take at Atlas is very much more on that side, I think, as opposed to maybe you're more on the visionary side, which actually really links to the skill that you're about to mention, right?
Yeah, fair enough. And even just to add to Wayne's credit on this, I think if Wayne does have, well, I guess that's the other thing. To me, it looks like a superpower when like Wayne looks at a document and he finds typos, or when he looks at the website and he sees if something's buggy. Like that is literally invisible to me. And I know to the average sort of person, I'm worse at it than average at spotting these things. But I also don't know if Wayne's just like really ahead of the curve at it, because I don't know anyone in my personal life who's as good as that. So out of interest, just to check with Wayne, like where do you feel like you fall on the curve? Like, do you know other people like that?
Mm, I think I'm in the top 20% of the universal card. So I do know someone who's better than me, and that's one of my very very close friends. But yeah, I do think I'm maybe like top 20%. And I think once you're in the top 20%, it's good enough that it's a marketable skill for you, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. But yeah, I don't know. Like on paper, I think when I talked this before, like sometimes on paper it doesn't look like an exceptional skill, but like man, it's helpful. You need at least one guy who has that. If you ever like have any like group thing, any venture or project, you gotta have at least one person who can do that, or you're gonna be sending in typos and random shit everywhere, which I feel like happens a lot in the academic world. But anyway,
But you also need someone to look at the big picture and plan the big things, and that's where you come in, right?
yeah, fair enough. I guess those guys are more obvious, but yeah, I think in terms of the skills that would come to me naturally, I think definitely it's that big picture stuff. It's the fact that I think the way I think about things is whenever I'm exposed to just something that's brand new, like even like cadets as an example. Like if someone just turns up to cadets and they're like, oh, they'll go to their everyday thing. For me, I'm like, okay, what is cadets? Oh, there's a ranking system. Okay, these people are at these ranks, these people are at these ranks. What's the progression system? Oh, okay, you go through these courses yearly to move to the next rank. I see. Who do these answer to? Okay, so there's these teacher officers, ACS staff. So they're sort of supervisory, but the school also, you also have to answer the school a little bit. And then there's the bigger, I forget all the terminology these days, but there's the bigger brigade, um, brigade. Yeah, it's like first and second or something. One that's focused on schools, one that's focused on communities. So they have their own directives that they recommend every unit does. So the unit would be just the school, and then you've got the alumni of the cadet unit who also have a say in things. And then there's like, oh, what are the logistics? Like, what are the limiting factors that prevent you from doing certain things? Like, what's the goal of the unit? That's something that I was always really keen on. Going back to like how I was really great in the middle stages of going up through the ranks, I was very aware of like the big picture things my superiors wanted. Did they want more ranked officers? Did they want to increase the cadet intake as a net whole? Did they want to improve our reputation in the school? Did they want to run more activities? Like that was what I was thinking about in terms of what do we need to achieve that next goal. Point being is that sort of understanding the landscape of all these interacting bodies, and essentially a lot of times, what I'm interested in, and part of what Wayne and I's sort of big drive in life is to fix broken things, right? So my input there is I like to sort of try and really unpack the system as a whole and to see like what's the path, what actually is the real path. Because I know other people, they'll see that big picture, and that's what most people say. Oh, okay, the system's F. This is impossible. But I'm like, okay, now give me a few hours. Let me meditate. Let me run through a few hundred different like pathways here. What's the absolute best case if I run through all these situations? How can I navigate all these obstacles? That's what I really like. A classic example of that, I guess, within Atlas is I've really enjoyed. It's been a lot of work, and it's something we've had to do anyway. But I've also enjoyed at the same time just learning about the landscape in education, right? Like the fact that I can say, for example, if you ask me, what does the education system look like, right? I'll ignore the schools and how they're run because that's its own thing. But I guess if we're talking about professional organizations, I can say there's STANISWA, the Science Teachers Association of New South Wales. That's a professional body for science teachers. There's, if we're looking at the chemistry side, there's RACI, which is the Royal Australian Chemistry Institute. That's a professional body for practicing chemists. I know that there is a primary principals association and a secondary principals association. So there are groups that are specific for all the leaders within the school level, right? There's also, I forget its name, it's like an Educational Council for Leaders, which is a federal body which looks at people like principals or similar tier, like head teachers, as well as leaders within the universities. And they have their own target group. And so there's all these like subgroups. I'm like, oh, okay, so these people work in there, this is their goal, this is their goal. And now that I've seen that, I'm like, okay, who's in the best position for me to reach out to first if I want to do various things? If I want to work with schools and run after school programs, or if I want to have a say in how HSC chemistry changes for the future, who are the target groups to talk to? Who are the big figures there? Like, it's very interesting. And, people say, oh, it's all a game of politics. And it kind of is, but I feel like a lot of people give up before they even try. I don't actually know if I'm good at it. It's more so other people don't even bother to try. Um, but yeah, I think that has really helped. And then taking that and condensing the picture to say, when I go back to say Wayne and Jeff in a meeting, and I'm like, here's the landscape, here's what I think we can do in the next year to sort of turn that into a pathway that looks doable. I think that's a pretty good skill, and it's quite generic. Like, it's obviously, I'm not saying that I can understand the education system. It's more like any system. I feel like if you give me enough time, I can sort of decipher how it works in that sense.
You know what I love about what just happened there? You and I both do this. When there's something that we're really passionate about and that we've thought about nonstop for years and that we know so well, we just don't stop talking and we talk so fast.
Oh, yeah.
Do you notice that?
Yeah. I always talk fast, but you're
Yeah,
right.
but like it's especially just noticed that there. So yeah, I think that's so accurate to what your value to Atlas is. So I love that. And we're on the train of complementing each other, which sort of rarely happens in our relationship, which is fine. But yeah, that's definitely the biggest thing. I think it really lends into it's very analytical. It's very synergistic with your strengths in science because the way you just broke down that system.
Like a chemical system. So.
Yeah, it's like legit just breaking down into chemistry, and it's totally synergistic with the way I see you teach chemistry, where you break things down into flowcharts and then you look at them. Just as a side note, you'd make a great systems engineer because like that's literally what systems engineering is. Except you've also got the analyzing people and politics part, which sometimes I feel like engineers lack. So if you ever need a second career, you should totally do that. But that's a perfect skill. Just for you watching at home, I know we wanted this segment to be helpful for you. Please understand, we don't expect you to be at the same level, right? This is coming from many years of experience in trying it and doing things.
But yeah, I guess the important thing is your skill doesn't have to be fully formed. It's not like, oh, I'm the world's best soccer player. Like, if you knew that, you don't need help anymore. So it's just these inklings of what you felt like. I guess another way to think about this question is, what have you noticed you're better than other people at? Right? What have you noticed that you've managed to do in a fast amount of time than someone else? You don't have to be amazing at it, but you've just noticed I have a slightly easier time than others. That's sort of the start of something I think really interesting. But yeah. Oh, yeah, sure.
It's, one thing is a lot of our students go to top tier schools where they're surrounded by good people already, and so it's sometimes it may be a bit hard to actually see where you're actually, as Anto says, better than other people, because it might just be that everyone there is better than other people at a lot of things. Most likely, a lot of you guys, part of it's privilege. We all have our privilege that we need to acknowledge. Part of it is probably just an innate genetic IQ sort of thing, right? Um, you've probably got many skills where you're better than the general population and potentially within the top 20%, or have the potential to be in the top 20% of, if you legit just put in half an hour to an hour of effort into actually trying the thing. So sometimes it's not even about, yes, it's nice to have a list of skills, but if there's too many things on that list, don't even bother building that list. Just try doing things and then go towards some of the next questions which we're going to ask. In fact, I'm going to use this to segue into the next one, which is, what would you do for free? So this is probably assuming where you've got food, you've got a house, you don't have to worry about any of that, right? You can, your immediate family and friends are taken care of, right? Now you've just got time. What would you do for free? What would you spend every day just doing? What actual action or task do you enjoy doing? And in fact, for some of my students, whenever we're going through mentoring, trying to think through what career paths should you go through, this is one of the common questions we want you to think about, right? What actual actions do you enjoy doing? If you enjoy being outside, that should signify what you should do. You should not work an office job, right? At the very simplest.
I think one thing that's really interesting is this is a hypothetical question now, but it could be a very real one in the future. Because any of you guys, you're very talented. Not even that. I wasn't gonna be that radical. I was just gonna say, like, if you've got your shit together and you don't waste money, and maybe you don't need to like buy the most expensive mansion in the North Shore, you will probably be financially independent before you retire. So there will probably, in your 30s or 40s, okay, let's say 40s, let's be generous. In your 40s, maybe 50s, maybe it depends if you decide to have a lot of kids or anything like that, but still, you're probably going to run into a moment one day when you're not old and unable to do anything, but you can do things for free. And, a classic trope of the whole FIRE community, the financially independent retire early community, is that they hit that goal and a lot of them just say like, oh, yeah, I guess I just keep working. It's like, a lot of them say, and once again, I don't know, it might be bullshit. Sometimes when we're on the other side of it and we look at it, we're like, no way, what are you talking about? I wish I had no time. But these guys, they always say the same thing. And I'll trust them because they're the one who, they've lived it, unlike us. They always say, yeah, the classics are always the same. I go somewhere in Europe, I'll sit on a beach for 6 months. And then I'm so bored of my life, and then they'll come back to it and maybe they'll pick up a hobby. Sometimes they like to just, I don't know, sell cameras or some shit, like just something they really like. But yeah, the point being, this could be a very real question for you guys. So really think about it. You don't want to hit that stage when you're there and you just have nothing to do. And I know everyone says, oh, you can work it out then, but yeah, still. Anyway, what would you do for free? It is a very tricky question. It's hard because I think definitely I'm of that mindset where there are a lot of things I would do for free as long as I was financially independent. And it partially comes back to my old mindset. I think I was very much kind of like that hippie scientist in my high school days where, I think in an alternate universe, if I didn't feel that I wanted to try and fix the education system, not that I feel like I'm obliged to, but I want to, and I do feel a strong conviction to do so. If everything was all good, my original pathway was just go into chemistry, do research. Everything about it I love. I love researching. I love reading literature. I love reporting it. I love giving talks about it. I love teaching it. Yeah, actually, the lab is probably my least favorite thing, but it's still alright. It's more so, I like to keep it all, I guess, in the head. I guess. So sometimes I'm not that great when it comes to putting it with my hands and stuff. Still, not a deal breaker at all. But everything about that I loved. But the important thing was, even before I thought about all the entrepreneurial stuff and making money and all that crap, everyone would obviously tell me the moment I had this thought, the job pays shit, right? Like you'll probably struggle to get a job, and even when you do, the pay's not particularly great, especially considering your skill. And the first thing I thought about, once again, before any of this big picture stuff and changing the world and all that stuff came to mind, was just, if I can afford to live, I don't actually mind. Like I think I would have very much fit into that hippie scientist just living out of an apartment day to day. If I didn't, yeah. I think if I didn't have any bigger goals, maybe I'd want some toys every now and then. But like if I didn't have any bigger goals, I think that would have been okay. And because of my background in there, to be honest, I would probably do a lot of things for free. So this question in particular is not as good for me, but I'll still throw out a bunch. Like I would obviously teach for free. That's the easiest example. I would love to teach for free. And part of what we want to do at Atlas is probably do some of our teaching for free to some extent. Um, Gladly teach for free. Um, I would happily. I always entertain thoughts of, I guess, more menial things. Like I would love to. I always tell people I'd love to sell fountain pens. That's one thing I've always wanted to do. Where I feel like if I get some time off, and I'm not so burnt out. Like maybe if I'm super burnt out, I'll probably take a real holiday. But if I'm still feeling up for it, I'd love to just, a classic example is like if people have been the Dimmicks in the CBD in Town Hall, that has a pretty big fountain pen selection. I'd love to just apply for a job there. I wonder if I wouldn't get accepted because I don't have any credentials. It's like I have the wrong credentials in that sense because I've never had a retail job. But I'd love to apply there. Just tell them, yo, I know a bunch about fountain pens. Um, just I'll sell fountain pens to people all day. Like I'd love to do that. That or just anything I have a hobby about. I think I'd love to just be the shop guy for that. And a lot of people say your passion dies when it becomes your business. But once again, I think this is more. This is what I'm doing for free. I'm not worried about keeping the shop running or turning a profit in that sense. I might even turn people away and be like, hey, if you go to this site, it's cheaper, and I'd probably get fired. But still, like all that stuff, I think it's so cool for me. Even though it's literally other people's job that they hate, kind of really like it. But yeah,
That was really interesting. I could see you making a good salesman. I think you'd be a good salesman. Just like transferable skills. Breaking down a system means understanding someone new and then breaking down their needs and wants and then seeing how you can sell to those particular needs and wants. That's actually a very relevant skill to salesman. Um, Before I answer my question, I just wanted to make a point though. What you said about chemistry research and the way you described what doing chemistry research actually looks like in terms of reading, going into the lab, talking to people, teaching, everything like that. I think that's probably one of those missing links that where when I was in maybe year 10, year 11, year 12, I sort of had a vague idea about what I was pretty happy with doing in the day-to-day life. But I wasn't able to connect that with particular careers or particular jobs, mainly because I just didn't know what they looked like. Right? I think that's something that maybe a lot of people in high school, especially those who have come from maybe a more sheltered background, I feel like that's what a lot of people will experience because they just haven't seen it and they don't have mentors per se for those particular careers and jobs and stuff. Obviously, if you're quite privileged, you may be able to connect with someone, which is excellent. But yeah, if you're someone who doesn't have that, then again, that's another thing that hopefully we can help you with in our mentoring program, where we can actually be like, okay, here's maybe what that sort of job looks like, what skills you might need to be good at it, and then maybe we can actually hook you up to either a resource or a particular person to tell you more about that job. My answer to this question about what I would do for free is a bit of a cop out because there are like lots of things I would I would play guitar for free. I would teach for free. I would um I would sit on a beach or I would pick up rubbish on a beach for free if I didn't have if I didn't have a job.
that's a good point. A lot of those like eco things,
Yeah, for sure. There's so
planting
many things.
trees.
Oh yeah, okay, I'll plant. Planting trees is kind of hot though. Yeah. There's like a limit to the environment. So there's like probably a bunch of things I would do for free. For me, the essence of this question is less about the task and more about the environment around doing the task, right? So for me, there's a lot of things I probably do. I would pick up horse poop for free if it was in a community of people that I cared for and cared for me. And that rhymed. Oh, right. So for me, I've realized over the past few years, and I realized that sort of a lot of what I did in high school was building towards this. I've been chasing to feel part of a community, and I think that I could do basically anything, and I would learn to do anything. I would do the accounting for for a particular place if it meant that I could feel part of a community, and it was a place that I believed in the values, the mission, felt comfortable there, had people there who I considered friendly and who I also felt I was contributing towards. I think if I'm in an environment where I feel like I'm part of a community, then I'll do basically anything for free. Yeah.
That's really That's cool. I think definitely I think in terms of different types of people, I think if those of you listening, if you feel like that feels like you, I think that's a really interesting insight you could have made into yourself because you realize, oh, that's something I need to keep an eye out when I want to find my thing. I'm not caught up on a pipe dream of a type of job, but rather I need to be careful about the people who work in that job. Yeah.
This took me all of high school plus 2 years of uni to figure out. Just saying. So don't worry. Everyone's on their own journey, and maybe you're further ahead on the journey than we are as well. That's or further behind, and that's okay. We just hope you'll figure it out, and these are the steps. But yeah,
Another tangent, I guess, just really quickly. That's more like I guess actionable, which is Wayne mentioned a really good point about just a lot of us just don't know what certain jobs look like. If you really want a taste of it, there's a resource I found recently that's really helpful. I have no affiliation with these people. It was just they were just mentioned to me from a friend. Um, if you look it up, there's another podcast. I think it's called the Careers Wiki, right, or something like that. But it's literally the whole function of the podcast. It's an Australian startup. The whole function of the podcast is exactly what Wayne mentioned. It's the fact that we don't even know what jobs look like. So every episode, they pick one person who works in a certain job and they interview them, and the dude just talks about a day in their life and talk about it. And it's so enlightening. I've only seen a few episodes, but it's really good, right? And especially, I think they're sort of getting into the flow of things now. Um, their background is a lot more, business startup-y. So a lot of their talks now have been very heavy on that field. So they haven't had, I don't think they've had like a teacher or a scientist on, but they've got like every type of business person you can get that I know nothing about. So you've got like investment analysts, you've got like data analysts. I don't know the difference between that. You've got like VC of something. You've got chief of staff or whatever. Like you've got all these titles. I don't know anything about those because that's more the big corporate world. But they've found people from quite successful companies in all these different levels. And if you're thinking you might like that area, I reckon give the podcast a check out. Once again, I literally have no affiliation with them. I've never met those people who run it, but I saw a few episodes. It was pretty cool. That might be enlightening if some of you want to know more about that field. Let's move on to the next question. Um, what have you lost track of? What have you lost track of time when you were immersed in? So what's something you've done before where you just were in a state of flow? You were just in the moment, in the zone, as they could say. You sort of lost track of things. Um, yeah. Okay, we'll go to Wayne.
definitely many answers. I think we're probably going to talk a bit about how, again, there's probably multiple answers to this. But the interesting one that came to my mind was playing music in a rock band with my friends. That's yeah, not a careers thing, but it's still valuable to understand even what you want to do as your hobbies and stuff as well, right? So that's definitely something. Um, yeah, but I think also just whenever you're in a task that you're doing that you're quite good at and that you're confident in, I feel like I can get to that state of flow as we like to call it. Positive.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I guess another way I think about this and sort of merging with some of the previous questions we've asked is what are the things that you feel immersed in or you enjoy that other people don't? I think that's why I've always been pretty happy with a potential life in science/academia because the short story is a lot of people still don't know what it looks like to be a scientist, and that's partially, I guess, the scientist's fault for not really explaining it. So we always want to be more open about this, and it's not the lab coat, right? Sometimes you're barely in the lab depending on your field of discipline, and it could be multiple reasons. If you're working in something a lot more like say education based, like my own interest, then you might be very rarely in the lab. Or it could also just be if you're in something that's very theoretical, like computational chemistry, when you're just running simulations and stuff, you're also not in the lab. So even that basic stereotype of just doing the lab code, it's not even correct, right? And some things that I know people don't like about research when they start to see more about it is basically all the office work looking tasks, like the fact that so much of it is just reading literature. Just got to read up. And, I haven't experienced it too much yet, so I'm not sure how I'll cope either, but I think I'm okay with it. But sometimes it is a bit, I guess, scary to realize that, if you have a topic of interest, from what I understand, I haven't had to do this yet, but if you're like really establishing yourself in the field, you've probably got the database set up. You've got like these databases are basically scan when new publications get released, and you've got the tags. So your subject field, if someone in the world has published something in that topic, you get notification. You probably get, a few. If you're in a really heavy field, maybe once a week or something, maybe in a quieter field a bit later. But like that's new knowledge that you need to learn that just keeps pumping up. Like, oh, someone discovered something. You got to read it and know it, or else you're gonna fall behind. I know a lot of people are just like, oh, crap, I have so much reading to do. So some people don't like that. I like that. As I mentioned before, I really like just delving into things. I guess I have the other issue, which other people do have, which is I really want to take my time with it. So if you give me too much at once, maybe I get a bit frustrated. But it's okay. Other people just hate presenting their research. That's a really common one. People hate presentations, public speaking. I love that. So that's okay, right? And it's that thing where it's like every aspect of that career, generally looks fun, and I have lost track of time doing. I think a really good example is, and this might not be the best example because I think a little disclaimer I'll put here is, and I think Wayne's example of the band was really good for this, is it's something you lose track of time with consistently. It's not just like it's just the brand new thing, and so you're just hyped about it because it's brand new, right? So like for Wayne's example, he's kept that going throughout the years. That's a consistent thing. He knows that's not just like the new fad that he's just on temporarily. For me, this one I'm not sure about because I haven't done it much yet. But for the small bits that I have done, for the research work I've done at uni when I've volunteered through things like the DL program at Sydney, once again, I haven't had much experience, but it hasn't died down for me. Like it's still just really fun. Like all the menial stuff. So a classic example is one of the research things I did in second year uni was analyzing some responses that students wrote for a certain question we gave them. I think I looked at it after the fact. In total, we analyzed maybe 800 student responses, and I think I did that over like 3 or 4 weeks. And I still had like the full uni workload and all my tutoring stuff going on. So I realized I literally had no time for this, right? And the gist of it was you had to look at the response, you had to highlight certain sections, and you had to look for these themes, like what topic students mentioned, and for each topic you would drag it, and basically you tally count which sort of themes were brought up across each of the responses. And so like the lecturers warned me, the researchers warned me, they're like, this part's gonna suck. A lot of people do not look forward to this, but this is almost like the necessary evil if you work in any like more social science facing research where you have to survey a lot of people. You just have to work through shitty data sometimes, basically. So people told me it's gonna be crap, and I knew it's gonna take me a long time to do it. But I don't know why. I just enjoyed it. Like I definitely zoned out while doing it. I definitely felt like in the moment when doing it. I think marking helped because this almost felt like a distant cousin to marking someone's homework because you are just understanding what they write and matching up themes. So I think I had more experience than a regular student, which really helped me. But to get all that stuff done in time was a ridiculous workload. So I think because I couldn't fit in my normal schedule, it was just like all my normal stuff. I would normally go to sleep at midnight. So instead, from midnight to 2 a.m., I would do that instead. Like I would just tack it on, right? And I'd maybe do that maybe 3 days a week. And I just did that consistently for like 3 or 4 weeks in a row. And just all that, I just zoned out for a couple of hours just in the middle of the night, just putting all that down. And then it was done in 4 weeks. I had it in. Researchers were like, shit, you actually did it. The fun backstory for that was, I guess it's a bit of goal setting as well. I came to them. I told them, I was like, hey, I don't want to be pushy on this, but I'm pretty ambitious. And if I get the chance to, I'd love to put in more work than you might expect of a normal student if they can give me better outcomes. And they told me, they're like, hey, you just do this amount of work, there's a high chance we can get a publication out of this. And so I did that, But yeah, like looking back at it, the fact that I was able to just put in those mindless hours, the other thing, not to go into many tangents, it was a nice break. It was a nice break because so much of my daily life is like, I don't want to sound pretentious, but it's like very like high level creative thinking. It's the same for Wayne, right? Like if you try to write a lesson plan, that's the highest order of thinking when you create new ways to describe content. So like I'm knackered after like half an hour to an hour of thinking on that, So it was a nice break to do something a bit more menial. It felt like the whole like Einstein in the patent office. Okay, now I've just called myself Einstein. That wasn't a good call. But that was quite therapeutic, I think. Anyway, point is, when I realized how much I just still enjoyed that, that's when I thought like, I could have a life in this. It's not bad.
Well, it is really interesting that you mentioned it. I have so many thoughts to add, but yeah, no, for sure. after like a long day of probably thinking about teaching, just marking some multiple choice questions, feels so good. If there's one theme that I've noticed amongst a lot of people our age, and I don't know if it's a thing intergenerationally or if it's just our generation with, our minds always sort of being hyper aware and so overly focused. It seems like a lot of us take a lot of pleasure out of pretty menial tasks. And I don't want to go into this conversation because it's a huge can of worms, but like the amount of times I've heard people just being like people like us, high achievers and stuff, lots of experience and doing things at a very high level, but the amount of times we've just found so much pleasure in doing something seemingly meaningless and seemingly quite easy. It's very interesting. Um, just one thing I really wanted to mention is you said somewhere in there you were talking about again sort of all the skills and things um, about chemistry research that really just align with things that you like doing, and that's obviously like the best case scenario. It's that you can pick something to do that you love every single component of, and it's like you mentioned like researchers who didn't like presenting, and so it kind of sucked for them. I think potentially one of the benefits of maybe some fields, maybe not all fields, but probably most fields is, and I see this a lot in sort of the way Anto and I work together. It's that most of the time you're working in teams, and most of the time you're working with other people where hopefully your strengths and weaknesses and interests and dislikes can be complementary. So, for example, you and I, there's some things that you're really happy to take on, like phone calls, and some things that I'm really happy to take on, like emails.
But yeah, so I think I guess to gradually conclude, you know, so first we sort of mentioned a few of our sort of experiences throughout mostly high school, but life in general that concerns setting goals and reflecting even if you fail on those goals. Right, and the big picture is hopefully you got some entertaining stories you can see. It really helps, at least from our sample set of two. When you set goals, regardless of how they turn out, it's just good for you. The second thing we also talked about, we sort of mused on a few interesting prompts that you can think about in terms of working out what goals you want to set for yourself. Maybe for me, just go through them again. They were what skills come to you naturally. What would you do for free? Once again, assuming that your life circumstances are all sorted out. What have you lost track of time while being immersed in, right? And yeah, those were sort of the three main ones, right? So
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary, right? So the I think the main takeaway should be do stuff, try stuff, do stuff. If you can do stuff while setting goals, even better. If you can make those goals realistic and achievable, even better, because that's going to help you do those things even more. But if not, then at least just do stuff. After you've done stuff, and we didn't really talk about this really explicitly, but we did sort of talk about how the things we've done in our experiences have helped us develop our skills and how we've needed to go through these processes of self-reflection to come to understanding those skills. And that's definitely something that we'll talk more about in future episodes. But that's also something to think about. Once you've done stuff, think about what did I like, what didn't I like, what did I learn, what was a success, what was a failure, and things like that. That's all from me.
yeah, sounds good. So let's wrap it up from here. So from Wayne and Anto, thanks for listening. Bye guys.